Hi, everybody. I feel very fortunate to have you inside, even though I think we should all be outside right now, and I could be giving you a speech with that, the peaks in the background. Speaking of peaks, there's some wonderful peaks here. In fact, I was just in Aspen, and there's a place called Pyramid Peak in Aspen, and you're going to see a lot of pyramids today, too. How many of you took Rodney Yee's class this morning, the yoga class? Well, a lot of you obviously did, and I didn't. I had a little breakfast this morning with someone, but what yoga is really about is about a mindfulness in your movement. And what I'm going to really talk about today is a mindfulness in your business. And one of the challenges that I see in American business, and I started my company 21 and a half years ago, is that most companies pay their attention, their mindfulness, to the lower level needs associated with the people they come into contact with. And the reality is most of the successful companies, the sustainable companies, the peak performers, actually focus on the higher needs. So when we talk today, I'm going to talk a little bit about a theory that's about 60 years old and has been reinterpreted for the business world. But it really comes back to the idea that in life and in business, what's most relevant and important is where we pay our attention, just like in yoga, and where you pay your attention. So I'm going to talk about that today. And I'm going to talk about it in the context of a theory that was created by Abraham Maslow approximately 60 years ago, and yet is incredibly relevant to business. So let's start by doing a little exercise. I want you to actually turn to the person next to you, and for about 1 minute each, talk about somebody in your life who was a role model for you in terms of their level of fulfillment, how they got the most out of life, how they were, as Abraham Maslow used to say, self-actualized. Think about somebody in your life, and then turn to that person next to you, spend 1 minute each just talking about that person who was a role model for fulfillment for you. So my role model for fulfillment was my maternal grandmother, Nani. And when I was growing up, I was the oldest grandchild in the family. And Nani was one of those people, she was perennially smiling. And she had this endless curiosity and a deep sense of joy in everything she did, even when things were getting rough in life. And later in life, when we weren't sure if Nani was completely there, she was there. She was there, but she was sort of in a different place. And the fact is that she was in a fulfilled place, whatever she did in life. And she helped me see that that is a possibility for all of us. And the reality is, there aren't just some of us in life who are fulfilled all the time and others who are never fulfilled. We sort of move up and down that pyramid over the course of time. Some of us are in certain stages in our life when we're in a full place, and then other stages in our life when we're in a more challenged place. What's interesting is that model, which I think we're all very familiar with, is very relevant to companies too. Companies can actually be at various levels of their fulfillment and their sense of maybe even self-actualization. These are 3 companies in a very difficult industry today. And of the 3, the one that's probably best known for being fulfilled is Southwest Airlines. So one of the things I'm going to really send as a message today is the idea that some of the themes that we've heard about in terms of human potential, actualization of potential, all of that is just as relevant to companies as it is to people. Let's start with just talking about, we've got a clicker issue here. There we go. The idea of your relationship with work. You can have one of 3 relationships with your work. It can either be a job, a career, or a calling. I'm going to come back to this a little bit later, but it's a relevant piece for everybody in the room, no matter what kind of work you do. I'll start by just talking about my calling. I grew up in Southern California. I went to college up at Stanford University in the Bay Area, went to Stanford Business School, getting my MBA, doing all that kind of sort of rigor. It was not exactly, Stanford Business School was not a place where I felt self-actualized, quite frankly. But, I graduated from Stanford Business School when I was quite young. I was 23, and for the next couple years out of Stanford Business School, I went to work for a commercial real estate developer in San Francisco. And my life was full of transactions. I was a transactional leader, not a transformational leader. And my life was all about negotiations. My relationships with people were all about negotiations. And the only time I wasn't negotiating with people was when I was in front of my computer on my Lotus 123 spreadsheet. So that was my life. And I was at a stage at age 25 where I was having a midlife crisis. And I went, and where do you go when you have a midlife crisis? You go down to Esalen. I went down to the Esalen Institute, learned how to become a massage therapist, and spent 12 months learning how to write screenplays with a famous screenwriting teacher from LA, and still was the real estate developer at the same time. On my 26th birthday, I decided to start a company called Joie de Vivre. And the reason I called it Joie de Vivre, which means joy of life in French, was because that was what I was thirsting for. I was missing it in my life. And I wanted to create a company, and it was going to be a hotel company, because hotels are a form of real estate. I was a real estate developer. It's a form of real estate that I actually liked because if we did our job well, we made people happy. You know, it's not a bad business to be in. If you do your job well, you make people happy. And so I started the company, called it Joie de Vivre, and we were all about creating opportunities to celebrate the joy of life, especially for our employees and our customers.